Hi, my name is PJ, and I am with Jordan's Crazy Dollhouse and Zoo. And I'm making this video because we all have things that have happened to us that are bad, but it is our choice on how we deal with them once these things have happened to us. We can either face them and move on, or we can dwell in the past and wonder why this happened to us. And so I'm going to tell you my story. I've had a lot of things happen to me, bad things, sickness, um, just stupidity on my part, and just a lot of things. But I've learned to overcome them and I keep going. And so I'm going to tell you my story. I was born with hip dysplasia. I was put in leg braces at as a small baby. And as that baby, I learned to crawl and I learned to walk with those leg braces. They were not just like leg braces, they were like a bar across my shoes, but they were kind of a half circle. And I would rock back and forth to get where I wanted to go. I guess I was pretty determined to get around. I did have four brothers and sisters at that time, and so I guess I wanted to keep up with them. When I was 4 years old, my uncle started molesting me. I used to think maybe it was my fault, that maybe he thought I wanted him to do this. And this went on for about 5 years. And later I found out I was not the only one that he did this to. And I hate to say this, but it made me feel a little better, like maybe it wasn't just me. And I'm sorry for saying that to the other ones that he molested. But um, I think when you're a little kid, you don't really think that way. In the 60s, you just didn't talk about molestation like that. I mean, nobody wanted to acknowledge that it happened. People didn't want to, they just swept it under the rug. Nobody wanted to believe that somebody did that to you. And so I I think that I didn't really tell anybody until towards the end when I told my mom, because like I said, I thought maybe it was my fault that it was happening and I didn't want to get in trouble for it. When I was 9 years old, our house burned down. We lived in a house that my dad had built, and all of us kids had come home from the hospital in that, and it was the only home we knew. But it burned down and we lost everything. And that was pretty traumatizing. We not only lost our home, we had to change schools, and my dad kind of opened up his own shop when we moved, and did radio and TV repair in his own shop, and no longer worked for the rock quarry, which was probably good for his back and stuff. But um, anyway, I think it was pretty traumatizing having to move. But we moved to a small town and a new school. I turned 10 that summer, and when school started, I went to school for 3 days and ended up in the hospital for 3 months with hepatitis. I was put in isolation when I was in the hospital, and everyone had to wear a mask and gown when they came in. Now, there was another little girl in isolation that did have cancer, and she died when I was there. And so my 10-year-old brain felt sure that I was going to die because I was in isolation. And when I finally got to go home before the holidays, I was so happy, and I started recovering much quicker than I was in the hospital. I was just so glad to be home. A couple months after I was home, my sister was swinging me around by one arm and one leg. I'm sure if you were a kid, you've done that once or twice. Anyways, my dad walked into the living room and yelled at her to stop. And she did, and let it go of me, and I went flying across the room and into the edge of the TV. I split my head open and had to have 14 stitches in my head. When I was at the hospital, I cried, not because of splitting my head open or that it hurt or anything, but because they were going to shave off part of my hair. And I was very upset about that. Um, when I was 10 years old, that was just a bad year for me, apparently. Just a couple months after that, I went to help my younger brother mow a lawn for a lady, and I was trying to start the lawnmower and pulled the rope. And when I was pulling the rope, my foot slipped forward right under the lawnmower. And I guess I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing, but like I said, I was 10 years old, and it cut the top of my foot off. And it took my shoe, and my shoe went flying across the yard. My mom thought for sure my whole foot was gone. and the lady we were mowing her grass, she ran in and got a white sheet to wrap around my foot, which was totally red by the time we got to the hospital. And anyway, it was pretty scary, and we got to the hospital, and I got very upset because they were going to give me a shot in the hole in my foot, and the doctor's like, would you want to walk around with a hole in your foot? And I'm like, yes. But anyway, after they got it stitched up, I had to use a wheelchair for about 6 weeks because I couldn't let it hang down because of the veins running through there. They were afraid they'd start bleeding again, and they didn't want that to happen. So being a kid is hard anyway, and when you're a kid and you're not actually the cutest kid, the smartest kid, the brightest kid, the most athletic kid, whatever, it makes it harder. And I think it's even worse nowadays than it was back then. It was bad enough back then. Anyway, I was bad at sports. I was bad at baseball. I was bad at running. I couldn't run worth a darn. I was probably always one of the last ones in when running. I just didn't like running. It wasn't fun to me. But the one thing I could do was I could jump. I could high jump, I could broad jump, I could running broad jump, I could standing broad jump. And at 13 years, I did track. And back then, we did high jump, what was called a scissor jump. And at a track meet, I landed hyperextending my knee. We went to our local doctor, and the doctor said it was a sprain, but it just got worse. My mom took me back several times. Each time he said it was a sprain, but I knew I wasn't re-spraining my knee. It just wasn't getting better. A year later, I was dragging my leg because I couldn't really walk. I just had to kind of drag it behind me. Kids at school were making fun of me, and they were mocking me. And I remember this one girl during lunch hour was imitating me, how I walked and everything like that. It really, really upset me. It made me hate school. I didn't want to be there. I guess that was the early stages of bullying. I didn't want to be there. I hated it so much. I hated the fact that people would make fun of the way I walked, and I couldn't help it. But anyway, my dad took me to his orthopedic doctor. My dad had hip replacements when I was little, and he still saw an orthopedic doctor. So he took me with him, and we went on a Friday, and the doctor decided that I needed a surgery, and they did surgery on Monday, and that was Monday, March 15th, and it was pretty scary, and I know it was kind of painful, and I got a big old scar from it, but at least I was able to walk after that. But that was the first of my surgeries, which ended up being 11, and that was my first knee surgery out of the 11. So going to high school was hard for me. I hated it. I didn't want to be there. I didn't have tons and tons of friends. I mean, I had friends, but I don't know. I think it was more me and not anyone else. I just kind of felt like a fish out of water. I just wasn't happy there. So I did drop out of school there, and I moved to Florida with one of my sisters. And then I got married, and my husband was in the Air Force. And we were stationed in Florida for 2 years, and then in the Azores, Portugal for 2 years. And while he was in the military, we had 2 boys, and great kids. They grew up to be great kids. Well, all of my kids did. And then we had 2 more children that were both girls after we came back after the military. And I'm not going to do the blame game, but we were young, we were stupid, we did stupid things. I can't even begin to tell you all the stupidity we did. But in the end, I guess what it came down to is I could not or would not forgive him for what he had done. And that was on me, I admit. It was on me. I just couldn't seem to get past it, which I know now was but was really stupid. He was my first love, and I will always love him. He'll always have a special place in my heart. But I just couldn't get past that. Anyway, we got divorced and I got into another relationship. And this relationship was the biggest mistake of my life. This guy was physically abusive. He crushed my nose so bad that the doctor actually told me, you cannot appreciate a broken nose until you've seen one like this. I actually have plastic in my nose because it was crushed so bad. And not only that, he not only crushed my nose, but he also broke my skull right here. And not much you can do for that, but let it heal. But it took many years before it would not pop as when I yawned or something. And I was really embarrassed by this and didn't want to let other people know what he had done to me. Maybe again, I was blaming myself. I don't know. But it took me a while to get through that. But after a couple years of this nonsense, I moved on again. But this time I went back to my ex-husband because he was there for me and I needed him, and I think in a way he needed me too. And so we got back together, but things hadn't changed. We still acted stupid. We still fought like cats and dogs, and we still did a lot of stupid things. We were still young, not as young as we were in the begin with, but we still just did stupid things. And like I said, I had never forgiven him, so I think I brought up those things a lot. So that part is probably on me that we didn't make it the second time. Um, I'm not going to say who it was on the first time, but the second time I'm going to say it was on me. Anyway, um, what I had left out though was, even though I had left school when I went to Florida, I did go back to school. I did get my high school diploma. I did go to college and got my education and was able to get good jobs throughout my work history. And I did get married a second time. It wasn't smooth sailing, but we were able to make it work. Um, the biggest problem we had at the beginning of the marriage was my husband was a compulsive gambler. He could not stay out of the casinos no matter what. He just couldn't do it. It was a sickness with him. And sadly, it almost led to us getting a divorce, but we finally were able to work it out. And he did stay out of the casinos the last few years we were together. And we were together 25 years. And we did make it work through the end, and he loved me and I loved him, and we we made it work. We did. I guess I learned forgiveness, and he did too, apparently, because we worked things out, and so we were together. And in the year 2000, I found out I had uterine cancer, and I had to have a hysterectomy, a total hysterectomy, and they took everything. And this was a type of cancer that um, would run in the females of the family, and so um, some of my sisters went ahead and got a hysterectomy before they went through it. So anyway, was that was when I first had to deal with cancer, and I went through with why me, what did I do, does God hate me, and all that silly stuff, which really has nothing to do with it. In 2008, I had to have my right knee replaced, and that was my 10th knee surgery on my right knee. And in 2010, I found out I had a rare blood cancer called polycythemia vera. In 2013, I had my 11th and last knee surgery, and that was a revision of the replacement because I had fallen downstairs and had knocked the replacement loose. And so they went back in and fixed the replacement, and it worked out after that. I would have been more careful falling downstairs. But anyway, that year I also had a pulmonary embolism, and it caused me to have to sleep with oxygen, and it put me in kind of a scary position. I mean, it could have killed me, but it didn't. Like I said, obviously I'm here, and I kept fighting, and that was just one of the other um, illnesses that I had. But it did keep me on oxygen for several years. Then on July 27th, 2015, I had a hole in my heart repaired that apparently I had been born with, and did not even know it until then. And they were concerned with it. Maybe that was what caused the pulmonary embolism. I'm not sure if it did or not, but they were concerned that that had. And then with the polycythemia vera, they felt it was best to go ahead and repair it, so they did. And then on November 18th of 2015, I had a stroke. My husband was there, and I did the classic stroke thing. He was in the bathroom, and I went down, and I couldn't get up because my left side, I couldn't move it. And so I hollered at him, and I'm like, Richard, I've fallen, and I can't get up. And we laughed about that up until he died. And but he was home because he had had surgery on his foot the week before, and I'm thankful for that because he got an ambulance called, and they got me to the hospital immediately. And I had had a stroke, and I was put in ICU for a week, and then I was moved over to a stroke rehabilitation center, and I was very determined to get back to everything that I wanted to get back, like the use of my left side, and my left mouth is still droopy, but not as bad as it was. I hate getting pictures of myself now because I can see that droop when I smile, so I don't like to smile in pictures. But anyway, I did recover quite a bit, and there was some damage, and there was some PTSD from it, and I had some PTSD from my earlier life too, so I did get some help with that, and I got some anxiety attacks from the stroke where I was afraid to be away from home because I was afraid I would have another stroke and wouldn't be able to get help. And they would come on, and it was just a horrible, horrible feeling. And I was just thinking of something else I was going to say that happened with the stroke, and then now it just slipped my mind. Well, if I come back to it, if I think of it, I'll come back to the stroke. But anyway, I had things where I would just cry for no reason. I was watching The Grinch on TV, and the part where it's not in the movie, but it was on the TV movie version where they were showing the contest of the lights between Martha May Huvier and Betty Lou Who, and Betty Lou Who had actually won, but the mayor said that Martha May won, and I started crying because Martha May won, and Betty Lou should have won, and I knew she was probably really hurt and everything. So anyway, but after that, my oncologist changed my chemo pills to some better chemo pills because obviously the first ones weren't working. My blood counts were not in control at all. And at first they made me pretty sick, and I ended up back in the hospital and for a week while while trying to get them under control, and so I could take them and hopefully get better. And then on September 9th of 2017, my husband was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. Sadly, he passed away September 7th, 2018, and I still miss him 2 years later. On January of this year of 2020, my polycythemia vera had progressed on to what is called myelofibrosis, and I was put on the bone marrow transplant list. My oncologist told me if I wanted to be alive in 5 years that a transplant was a must. And then my oncologist retired, and so I had to get a new one. And him and I are still kind of trying to build up a rapport. At first, I wasn't sure he was going to work out, but he has really tried, I think, and so we're working on it. And anyway, this whole video is to tell you that I'm telling my story because I am not a victim. I am not a victim of molestation. I am not a victim of spousal abuse. I am not a victim of disease, but I am a survivor. I'm a survivor of child molestation. I'm a survivor of spousal abuse. I'm a survivor of stroke. I'm a survivor of cancer. And I'm a survivor of losing my husband. And you just, you have to believe, you have to have faith that you can make it through this. Your best bet is to know that God is going to help you through this and that you can do this. And I see things nowadays, and abuse, sexual abuse, and physical abuse is so much worse now than it was back then. I mean, I know it's more publicized now, but it's worse. And it's worse to the point where a lot of kids, our parents, use it to teach their kids to say it about other people for revenge, and I'm not sure what all for, but it's a terrible thing. And it they make it so people do not believe the kids as quickly as they should, because so many times people lie about it, especially as they grow older, and they hear about this stuff. Little kids talking about it who shouldn't even know what sex is, and yet they know about it because they've been told about it by their parents, or they see it on TV because their parents don't think anything about letting them watch it on TV. So I think that we need to look at ourselves as parents and need to protect our children and try to make sure that they know that we're there for them, and that it is not funny and it is not a game to lie about. But if it happens, they need to come to you, and it needs to be reported to the police. And don't make them victims, make them survivors. And I hope you enjoy my video. If you do, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.